Michael Rayner, welcome to Brisbane Business Gurus. And more importantly, it's an amazing award you just won. The Lord Mayor's Business Award, the Lifetime Achievement Award. You've done terminals, bridges, museums internationally. Brisbane's growing really quickly. What do you know we must get right in the next decade?
Property values are great and all those sort of things, but if you don't have a kind of rich, diverse culture in your city, I can't see them really thriving.
Part of the picture is actually post-Olympics and how to keep the momentum running, because we don't want it to fall off a cliff.
Connections between places, I think, is probably the biggest thing. You don't necessarily have to do a new extravaganza somewhere, but Kangaroo Point Bridge, for instance, has been fantastic, linking Kangaroo Point through to the city.
Behind that, it's just amazing. I haven't seen the numbers, but I know how.
I think it's about 9,000 a day, roughly on it.
If there is a trend going forward in the architecture space, is there anything that you can see? Michael Rayner, welcome to Brisbane Business Gurus, and more importantly, it's an amazing award you just won. The Lord Mayor's Business Award, the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Thank you.
It's been going for 20 years. It's just had its 20th event and only 7 have won it. I've known the name, having been a town planner back in the day and having done my university degree with the architects. And you're always the smarter ones that we always looked up to. We were the few town planners out at Queensland University, but it's just so much to look at, in your life, and just obviously spending more time recently just going back. If I look back, it was sort of 1983 in Sydney where you first joined as Cox Rayner. Then we're already a well-known firm.
It was called something else then. It was called Philip Cox Richardson Taylor and Partners.
Philip Cox,
and
in 83.
When I came to Brisbane in 1990, I opened Cox Rayner.
Cox Rayner here.
Yeah.
Okay. I did say on the way up the stairs when we were having a quick chat, can we claim you as a Queenslander? You go for Queensland, the state of origin, and you go for the Reds and Rugby Union.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, it took me a couple of years to get rid of the Waratahs and the Blues, but I eventually did. And I can say in particular, I'm a rugby tragic now and a big Queensland Reds follower. So, and enjoyed doing a project for the Reds out at Ballymore, the National Rugby Training Centre. So,
which is an amazing facility. My son's in the academy there, and like the facility is amazing, from the gym to the meeting rooms. Everything's like new age. So, I mean, something like that, for example, you've done terminals, bridges, you've done Singapore projects, museums internationally. This is what this is about. It's like Brisbane businesses going national and global.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get the expertise? I've often wondered. There's so many lanes there, boats, terminals, bridges, cars, like training facilities. You're winning a lot of jobs. If you put it down to it, is it a knowledge piece in a particular lane, or is it a process that you work in, Michael?
Good question. Yes, some of it's a bit of both, really. With the National Maritime Museum in China, which was a really fantastic project that we won a few years ago. I worked on the Australian National Maritime Museum in Darling Harbour in Sydney, so that got us into the competition. But it doesn't get you the project; it just gets you sort of through the door. Doing the project's really a creative exercise, and then creating a compelling argument for something, and that was a particularly interesting competition. Just sometimes it's just you're in the right place at the right time, I guess. And in that case,
too many times though to be a fluke, Michael.
Possibly, but that time they had been having a big debate in China about some architects designing sort of these incredible monumental museums to brand their cities, and there'd been a bit of a debate going on. No, we don't really want them all to do these kind of generic things. And I guess I can say Australian architects, but maybe Brisbane architects, we're very sort of conscious of sites and context and trying to respond to them. And we found in that competition, lots of our competitors, which were global, were kind of doing something that could be anywhere. Whereas we just automatically go and look at, what is it about this site that's really fascinating? And I think we won that project because we were probably the only one that had done a site-specific solution for them that they fell in love with and felt really represented that particular city and that particular site. And that probably goes for lots of projects. I'd say the Helix Bridge in Singapore was another good example of that. But again, we got into the competition because we'd done bridges here, like Karulpa Bridge.
So typically when you're shortlisted, is it like you just do your final pitch in a panel of 5, or is it differs?
It varies, but I could say with that National Maritime Museum in China, there were 40 entrants, I think. They shortlisted 12. They then got some more information and they made it 8. And then they said, okay, we're going to have a competition with 8. And so we did that, and then we expected a winner. And then they announced, no, we decided we can't decide between 3, so we're going to make you do more work and compete again. So that went on over about 8 months. unusually, we had to go and keep presenting to them in kind of what they called workshops during that sort of 8 months. So we went 5 or 6 times up there and showed them this is where we're up to, and we get some feedback. So that kind of thing, I find there's a lot of rigour in that process. But generally here in Queensland, it's a submission for an expression of interest. You get onto a short list. You then get asked to tender, which may or may not be a competition. If it's a competition, I love it best of all, because then you get to show your wares and what you can do. That's the normal process.
And when you're doing these international bids, are you needing a local team? You know, obviously each different country has its different rules and whatnot. So there's a lot of due diligence on your end to make sure. I don't imagine that you would have to be able to mobilise, because countries are looking for work, you know, employment and all that sort of thing. So does that come into it?
It does. Perhaps China's the one country where you just have to. We just don't know their regulations well enough and their building codes and all that sort of thing. So we did link up with that. Ironically, in that particular competition, they only told us to do that when we were in that final 3 period, and all 3 firms went and picked the same company to work with, but unbeknownst to us. So we found we all had the same.
Excuse the pun, Chinese walls.
Yeah, so there was, which was very interesting. Actually, when we presented for that, they let us watch each other's presentations too, which is usually it's in camera, and you can't do that. So China's pretty different. Singapore.
So on that point, that's interesting, because real estate's ever evolving weekly, and we're always tweaking our proposition, our pitch, our presentation. Looking at your competition, did you get anything out of that? Like, did you think, well, that's a good idea? Or
it was pretty much too late by that point to make any changes. But you kind of got to back yourself, I think, if you start thinking, oh, how do we beat them? If I can segue into something else where I do occasionally teach at the university, and I did a masterclass a few years ago at the University of Queensland, and I thought, oh, these guys don't get real projects very often to do, so I'll set them a project we're doing with a real brief and a real client. And hopefully that will equip them. It was final year and they're about to go out into the big wide world, so I thought it'd be great to do that. But we'd done a design for this particular project. I'll probably remain unnamed, and I thought, these guys will probably struggle a bit. It's pretty complicated. But I can remember the moment where one of those students put up the design, and I looked at it and I thought, I think this might be better than what we're doing.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So
how good.
We had a moment there, and ultimately, actually, she came and joined us. So she's been with us ever since. It was 6 years ago. Worked on the project, and we made some modifications that related to her work. So I think as long as you get the best outcome, but it was one of those seminal moments in your life where I just didn't actually get that might actually occur.
Excellent.
So it was fantastic.
Going back to the Lord Mayor's Awards, and amazing, and again, congratulations. You're up against some pretty tough competition, and I look at, the quality of the people, the CEOs, the business owners, and the different industries. There was pharmacy and sustainability and everything. And so Brisbane, it's on a major incline. Agriculture's up, mining's up. Everything seems to be up at the moment. And, there's since COVID, they haven't built enough houses. So just if we're looking towards the Olympics, which we all are, the Lord Mayor's driving in a massive campaign for us. It just looks like we've got this perfect storm. We're in this bubble right at the moment. So people ask me every day, how long is it going to last? Because it's a cycle we haven't seen before. But just in terms of the Lord Mayor's Awards and whatnot, you said just briefly when you're coming up there, you sort of doesn't sound like you're expecting to win it.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Those awards that night were for particular awards that we knew were going to be awarded. It was a great night, and it was really, really great fun, and congratulate the winners and that sort of thing. And I thought, I guess another drink and I'll go home. And I think the Lord Mayor said, oh, and there is one more award that we would like to give out tonight. So I still didn't twig that would be anything I would be involved in, but what a great thing. I was just emotionally overwhelmed, I have to say, by receiving that.
And obviously, looking back again through history, you were here and prominent through that whole Trevor Redcliffe, urban renewal, which was a major, Sally Ann, all that type of thing. There was Brisbane Jump then. What are you seeing it currently through the administration from a holistic point of view, from a macro point of view?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, we've got this moment where it just should be transformative for Brisbane coming through to the Olympics. And, there's obviously the sports venues, but council will be involved in the infrastructure, urban improvements, spatial improvements, etc. Really exciting to be part of that. And lots of quick kind of urban design thinking will happen where we kind of think, oh, the valley, for instance, we've accepted what it is for a long time, I guess. It's very close to the stadium. It needs to be sort of really re-looked at. So things that you wouldn't do if there wasn't that stimulus behind us. The Lord Mayor, Adrian Schrinner, Adam Allen as well, I think are really the force, as far as I can see, behind this energy to get these improvements working. And they'll sort of dovetail into better kind of property potentials, because if you, for instance, enhance the valley, it will bring other developers down there to look at it. So I think they can sort of work off each other. I often think with, say, South Bank years ago, if I can go back to that, there was the parcels of land behind the parkland there that the government wanted to get developed, but no one was really interested because there wasn't really any sort of great urban value in the place.
Yes.
So then they decided to do Grey Street and do all those things themselves, and that put sort of catalyst in there for people to say, what a great place, let's go and do it. So I think it's sort of cart-horse type situation quite often. Now is, in my whole 35 years here, is by far the best time.
Yeah.
As you said, the economy's doing extremely well in Brisbane. The vision, though, the council has, I think, is got to be behind that. You could get sort of politicians, I guess, that are kind of juggling lots of things, but they seem really focused on what kind of, and particularly connections between places, I think is probably the biggest thing. You don't necessarily have to do a new extravaganza somewhere, but connecting places up, and Kangaroo Point Bridge, for instance, has been fantastic, linking Kangaroo Point into the city.
You're behind that. It's just amazing,
great project,
and it's been such a good link into the city. And I haven't seen the numbers, but I know how.
I think it's
popular.
about 9,000 a day, roughly on it.
What was the projection? Any idea? Was that
about half that? I think
half that. Yeah.
So. It's just amazing. People obviously clearly dying to get to places that they don't. We've got a serpentine river. We've always had that kind of lovely thing, but also obstacle to kind of any direct movement. But those bridge connections and other land connections we can create can just change it. And I think people often think, that I won't go there, that's far away, but actually geographically it's not. So if you make the connection, suddenly that becomes part of your lifestyle too. So I think,
back on the Olympics, obviously part of the picture is actually post-Olympics and how to keep the momentum running. I was in Sydney in the 2000 Olympics, living there, and it's interesting to see, Barcelona, to see where you think and how Brisbane is going to keep that momentum running. Have you sort of got a view on that, having seen a few, obviously some cycles post-Olympics, because we still want it running. We don't want it to fall off a cliff.
No, I don't think it will.
No.
I've got some visions, if I can call it that, that I've put to the Lord Mayor and Adam Allen as well, also the state government. So I've got some sort of big ideas, I guess, that I think, for instance, the point about connectivity is important, but I've got these ideas that you could create sort of, well, they've already got things like green corridors. So I've got an idea of creating almost a green belt around the city centre. I just call it green corridors, but they all kind of, there's about 5 of them, they already kind of exist. If we can think in the next 7 years how to make those kind of urban connecting things work, I think the momentum then will carry on, because developers and others will suddenly see potentials they didn't see before, probably through proximity to other things. And for instance, when I sort of came here, I did, I think, what you'd call the first Brisbane City Centre master plan, I think in 1997 with Trevor Redcliffe. At the time too, but it was kind of considered to be a CBD, and there was the rest. And I think, we were the first to go, no, actually there's this broader 5-6 kilometre radius out there, which you should call the city centre, not just the CBD. So, I sometimes think some ideas I brought back then didn't happen for 20 years later, but they kind of did happen. And that's been part of our momentum. Now we've got this other really bigger opportunity to create kind of a legacy. I'd like to see some cultural things happening in that period, because I think, if you're coming here in 2032 to watch the Olympics, you're also going to go, what do I do with my spare time? And I think we need to get some cultural tourism facilities going as well. So I'd like to just see a kind of richer tapestry of things that are occurring. And if you think about, I guess, development, I just think if people love their city, others will come and love it too. So whether they're tourists or they're developers, you'll see the potentials because people are making the city fantastic. And I think you can see that overseas in the better cities of the world. often think about things like, great axes in cities, whether it's in Lisbon or Paris or whatever. There's something fantastic at the end of it. You don't just sort of wander off into the nether. So part of my planning is to go to council and say, I think, you've got this wonderful, say, Albert Street axis that's happening, which is their Green Spine, which is a fantastic initiative. You get to the gardens. It's a nice parkland, but I think, what else could that be? And, I guess in my sort of presentation speech about that award, the press got onto me saying, what else? But I have really been driven all my life by that thinking of what else can happen beyond what we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, we're in McLaughlin Street now. The younger folk probably don't remember, but there was a Brisbane City Council bus depot at the bottom of James Street, and I think there was a Coca-Cola site, basically. There was no such thing as a James Street precinct. You were probably on those committees where Redcliffe, they had a vision of an entertainment precinct down there, and we said, I can't see it. And all of a sudden, there's cinemas. Now, fast forward, they've got a hotel in there, which is the top 50 hotels in the world currently ranked. We were the poor cousin. Having worked in Melbourne, Sydney, people go, look at Brisbane. They're coming here for an eating experience, for a leisure experience all of a sudden, and proudly bringing their friends. So we've really jumped. We've leapt big leaps in recent times.
I think my firm probably had something because we did James Street Market, which was probably the first of those things. Yes. I do think design makes a difference. If that had been a fruit barn, that'd be just sort of important shed, but it wasn't, and you have to acknowledge the client.
Still running
the
strongly.
Client was fantastic, but that then stimulated all the other projects to happen after that. So I think, Brisbane's a really, for me, better than Sydney in terms of finding people that are prepared to go outside the square and think themselves what else. And I think in that case, it's a classic example because look what's happened to it. And now there's other precincts looking at creating a similar kind of thing.
And you mentioned better than Sydney. There's just been a sale in Newtham on the river for a knockdown for $25 million for basically a piece of land, which is going to be a new house. So that is Melbourne, Sydney harbour prices. So that's a big jump for us.
Yeah.
Brisbane's growing really quickly. What do you know we must get right in the next decade?
Lots of things, actually. I think we need to keep diversity going in cities and inclusivity going in cities. So that's probably number one, that we don't let, in a way, the real estate market just dictate everything about how a city goes. And for Brisbane, I think connectivity in particular is the number one thing between places. So whether it's bridges or links, I think we've really got to get the connectivity thing right, and that will really make a very rich city.
If there is a trend going forward in the architecture space, put AI aside, is there anything that you can see? Is there a movement?
Not really. Through the last century, I've done, one of my loves in my life was studying sort of art, the combination of art and the relationship between art and architecture. And there were, 40 or so movements through the last century, starting with constructivism in Russia and then Cubism, etc., where artists sort of drove the movements and then architects kind of were the followers and picked up on the movement. There's a fantastic house called Villa Savoy in Paris that Le Corbusier did, which Robert Hughes wrote. I thought was just a great line. It was the cubist never painted.
Oh,
and
interesting.
So, and the architects felt quite threatened quite often because they wanted to be the avant-garde. So movements kept on perpetuating because it kind of kept architects' reputations going if there were groups of architects following a particular style or attitude. But that really did dissipate after 2000. It just ran out of puff. And you started to get the sort of the era of the Starchitect, where instead of a group of architects becoming famous for having a movement, one architect. And Frank Gehry was one of those who died a couple of days ago, I think. Whatever that you'd call Zaha Hadid's another one. So you got into this different marketing thing in cities where cities wanted a brand architect to brand their cities. So Frank Gehry with the Guggenheim in Bilbao. And then that's gone on since. Whether that's a good thing's probably debatable to me, because it doesn't necessarily mean the whole city's better. It just means you've got a landmark in the middle of it. So I'd say stylistically, no, there's probably nothing on that front. But I also think we do really have issues in cities that are much more critical than they were before. I think you've got climate change, you've got threats of natural disasters. Brisbane's not immune to that. You've got increasing social issues, homelessness, loneliness, etc. And I think architects have to process all those things too. So it's, it's a sort of, to me, a bit of a shift away from a kind of, extravaganza piece of architecture for the sake of it, to trying to really knit cities together in ways that are more diverse, more equitable, and so on. Less gentrification of inner cities would be good. Keep diversity going. I just think if you don't have diversity, you don't have anything that people are going to love. Ultimately, it might look fine for a while. That property values are great and all those sort of things. But if you don't have a kind of rich, diverse culture in your city, I can't see them really thriving into the future. And I really think Brisbane's onto a lot of that. So in my career in particular, I've been working, on some pretty significant buildings like Glasshouse or Kangaroo Point Bridge, but I've also been working on lots of social kind of projects too for, say, victims of domestic violence and homelessness. And I just find that mix is really good. And I feel like I'm contributing something across a number of territories.
You maybe think more, but you think architecture, you sort of think design, but there's so much more to it. You just explained it. So some of your knowledge set sitting across the vision of Brisbane, it sounds giving me comfort, and my
Thank
kids
you.
will not. So, so just on you, Michael, morning routine, daily routine. What's the cadence? Are you in the office every day? Are you sort of? Are you 24/7?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a tragic. I'm sorry, I have to say. I get in at sort of 7:15, and I probably don't go home till 8:00 roughly. So
You'd be a good real estate agent.
Whether my lifetime balance is quite right, but I love what I do, so it's not a problem. Weekends, I do kayaking just about every weekend, go out with a friend. If I go on my own, I probably aren't just relaxing. I'm probably thinking about the design of something out on the river or Moreton Bay, as you can, So I do that. It's balanced to me in that when I do have leisure, it's kind of exciting leisure. I tend not to just sit around doing nothing, I could say. But I do find, I don't know whether it's a bad thing or a good thing, but I do find I don't actually stop thinking about design or architecture or something. And I don't find it a problem. I don't see it as that's work. I just think my mind ticks things over.
It's in your DNA.
And it's in my DNA to do it. But I could call it a leisure experience as much as a working experience.
Nice. Lastly, Michael, advice for young architects coming up. What can you give them?
I think they should travel a lot. I think they should read a lot. I think they should try and develop their own ethos over time. It may not come immediately, but I think they should work out what they think is really important to them or to a city, and then kind of focus on those things they think are important. And then out of that, you'll get an ethos of what your place is as an architect in the architectural world.
Everything you told us, Michael, makes me feel very comfortable. We're in very good hands for the city.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. Thanks for being part of Brisbane Business Gurus, and also really congratulations to a very, very, very important award and very well deserved.
Well, thank you very much. But
thanks, Michael.
I'd just like to say I just found that award probably the best award I've ever been given. It's just incredibly rewarding to. I think you do things during your life, but you don't probably realise sometimes it's the accumulation of those things that's more significant than any one of those. So I just find that award fantastic because it's sort of recognised an accumulation of many little contributions over the years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.